Is the Bitcoin reserve now failing? Is the gold market being manipulated? And what will happen tonight at the Federal Reserve's interest rate decision? Hey, and welcome to Crypto Owl. Exciting times right now. Prices aren't really moving up, and yet a lot is happening. And whenever prices go down, people naturally look for explanations. So let's dive straight into the chart. After the Bitcoin chart had risen again over the past few days since October 23rd until October 26th, many believe that this was simply the pricing in of the interest rate decision expected tonight. Of course, no one really knows how it will turn out in the end. And then we saw that yesterday, or rather the day before, things turned a bit red again. And actually, if you zoom in again, it was pretty intense. From up here to down here, the movement yesterday was pretty wild, to be honest. And of course, there's an explanation for all of this, or rather, many people immediately try to figure out what caused it. What happened? Sometimes there are very simple explanations for this, and sometimes people just make up some chart patterns. In this case, it was a simple explanation, but not a pleasant one. Namely, we all know this. Bitcoin reserves are a big topic. Why should I build them up? To protect against inflation. That means your money keeps losing value. We'll take another look at that in a moment. And you can do something about it by investing in Bitcoin. In other words, your money is inflationary, but Bitcoin is more deflationary if you look at the chart or its value over time. So it obviously makes sense to counteract that. And many companies then say, we're building up a Bitcoin reserve just like Michael Saylor's company, Strategy, is doing now. And now we have the first treasury, that is a Bitcoin reserve, so a Bitcoin treasury company that has moved Bitcoin and very likely also sold some. And that caused this price crash. Let's take a look at that. There's a company, Sequence, that wanted to build up a Bitcoin reserve. They managed to accumulate over 3,200 Bitcoins, and now they've moved 970 Bitcoins. Whether they were actually sold is hard to say, but the whole thing went to a Coinbase Prime deposit address. We can see that here. The Sequence Coinbase Prime Custody was then deposited into another wallet address, also Coinbase Prime Custody. And of course, the big question is, did they actually sell, or was it just moved to another wallet? That's the big question, but many assume that this was the first sale by a Bitcoin treasury company. After such an incident, the question naturally remains, did they really sell in the end? And that's the question that no one can answer with 100% certainty. But what we can clearly see is volume on Coinbase after the 970 Bitcoin Sequence deposit at 1753. About 20 minutes after the Sequence deposit, the selling volume began to rise. That means this transaction caused people to sell or go short. We can see all of this quite clearly right here, where it all began. You have to keep in mind, when you look at the timeline here, I'm using UTC plus 1. That means he's talking about around 1815 UTC. And then here we're talking about 1915. And that's when it all started. Here you have a 19 o'clock candle, a 20 o'clock candle, a 21 o'clock candle. So due to the time difference or the different time zones, we can clearly see that the red candles appeared after this news, or rather after the deposit was made into the Coinbase Prime cash account from Sequence. And that caused the price to drop here. So the question remains, did the first Bitcoin treasury company sell now? That remains unclear, but for now it doesn't look very good, and that's what led to this sell-off. Buy Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies on MEXC. On MEXC, you can trade over 1,800 cryptocurrencies, go long or short, or buy on spot. There you have 0% fees and even a $10,000 bonus when you sign up. With my link, you'll also get an extra 10% cash back on all fees at MEXC. You even get a 10 USDT bonus when you sign up, in addition to the 10% cash back. Buy and hold Bitcoin easily, for example, in the spot section via limit and market order. Or use futures trading, whether long or short, and even with up to 500 times leverage, now with brand new AI analysis. This can be worthwhile for predicting the right direction of the price. MEXC also offers you many events in the crypto space, whether it's Launchpad, Airdrop Plus, Kickstarter, and every day lots of trading bonuses with their Futures M-Day. Receive up to 80,000 USDT extra every day. Bitcoin is falling, but stocks are surging. I've also told you this in the last videos, and I want to give you a closer look at the market, how it currently looks, and just let's say that the old financial world is still calling the shots here, unfortunately. We can see that right now, as Ash Crypto said, Nasdaq futures have just reached a new all-time high. That also had something to do with the Japanese rare earth deal, and Nvidia was involved as well, since they've just closed new deals too. We saw that, and then the mini futures shot up while at the same time Bitcoin dropped. But we can see that here because, as I said, there was the Bitcoin Treasury Company, so it really happened simultaneously here. I don't know if we can talk about manipulation here to keep the price down. On the one hand, the big market is being pumped, either through great announcements, impressive trade deals, rare earths, and so on. I already told you about this on Monday. Feel free to check it out again here. This keeps pushing the financial market further, and somehow strange things always happen that still end up breaking down the Bitcoin market. But it's not just the Bitcoin market that has suffered now, but also the price of gold. Because it has also dropped, and if we take another look at the gold price, we first saw that so much money flowed into the gold market. We can see that here. In just a few days, as much money flowed into the gold market, that is the digitally traded gold market, as the volume of Bitcoin. So the volume of Bitcoin flowed in here once, and now we're seeing exactly the opposite. Specifically, it reached a new all-time high up here at the top, and then it dropped. We can see that here, 3.37 trillion US dollars were wiped out from the gold market in just 1 week. And that's equivalent to the market cap of Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, Solana, and XRP combined. And that's insane. So we can see that stocks are currently rising extremely fast. As I said, it's also partly due to the Orange Man, who of course makes great trade deals for American companies. At least on the surface, how things will play out in the long run is another story. And all of this is, of course, pushing stocks and the US financial market upward. And a lot of people are watching this, and both Bitcoin and gold are currently falling behind somehow. On the one hand, you have digitally traded gold, which of course has hit all-time highs, but I would say the regular gold price, meaning the price per ounce and so on, feels like a different price. Even if it's traded digitally, the ounce itself always has its own value. No matter whether an economic crisis breaks out or a war happens, this ounce always has value. Whether it's currently at $5,000 or $4,000, from a private and crisis perspective, it always holds value. With Bitcoin, that hasn't been proven yet. We haven't had a major crisis yet where we could pay with Bitcoin, but that could very well happen in the near future. We'll have to wait and see. Let's hope it doesn't happen. In any case, there's something very special happening today, and that's of course the topic of interest rate cuts. And right now, if you take a look, the bets are clearly on an interest rate cut. Specifically, a cut of 25 basis points, 98% expect that, and the other two options, either more than 25 basis points or no rate cut at all, are at 2%. And that's exactly what the market has pretty much priced in already, as we've seen before. Those green candles show that the market has simply priced it all in. At the moment, I don't see any problems unless something strange comes up in the speech that could turn things negative. I can imagine that it might be announced that there will be further rate cuts, for example, 50 basis points at the next rate decision. But we'll have to wait and see, because as you may have read in our Telegram group, there are currently a huge number of layoffs happening, and these will inevitably have an impact somewhere, most likely on the labor market or more specifically the unemployment market. And all of this means that the Federal Reserve will take a close look at the situation and will realign its interest rate decision next time accordingly. A quick note, if you want to get a Tangem hardware wallet, now is a great time. You can choose one of the two standard options here. With the code CryptoOil, you get 10% off either the standard or the stealth version. Those are the two variants. And on top of that, you can also pick a colorful wallet or a Casper wallet, pizza wallet, whatever they have available, you can choose. The whole thing is heavily discounted because you get 50% off the second card, friends. 50% off the second, 10% off the first. That means 60% at Tangem with the code CryptoHile and only until November 7th. So for selected models, it's a top offer. And there's still 25% off the ring, that is 10% and 15%. And the whole thing comes with free shipping. It's worth grabbing the deal at Tangem, and it's long been known that inflation is eating away at our money. But if you take a look at this and compare three currencies, the dollar, the euro, and the Swiss franc, since 2002, there's an interesting video here. Take a look at it. Since 2002, these three currencies have been compared with each other. And just look at how inflationary these currencies are, or rather, we can clearly see that the USA in particular is printing an enormous amount of money. And when there's a lot of something, it naturally becomes less valuable. We can see that here on this timeline. And just look at how little $100 is worth all of a sudden compared to the starting point. Swiss francs also suffered a bit during the coronavirus crisis, of course, but overall, as you saw at the end of the video, it's pretty crazy when you look at the whole picture. That's where we want to go. That's where we are in August 2025. If you had $100 in 2002, they're now worth just a little more than half. The euro did a bit better, and the Swiss franc held up the best. So, inflation is an important topic. And then, of course, the big question is, what is the Federal Reserve doing to counteract it? In this case, interest rates are being lowered very slowly. And that's obviously important. When interest rates are lowered, more money flows back into the market. Because low interest rates also mean cheap loans. Cheap loans mean more money for the market. More money for the market can, of course, flow not only into stocks and gold, but also into the Bitcoin market. So, are you ready for more money? And are you ready for more money to flow into the market? Let's hope so. We can be very curious to see what happens tonight. The important thing will be Jerome Powell's speech, whether in fact the markets will continue to move or whether prices will trend negatively because something in the speech wasn't so good. The 25 basis points that are very likely to be cut tonight are already priced in. I think if that's all that happens, it will be a completely boring event. We can be very curious to see what happens. Stay tuned. I know there are a load of people live here on YouTube, so check out some live channels, then you can see how other people are reacting. With that, I want to say thank you for watching and see you in the next video.